I want you to try to picture a highly relatable, just totally mundane moment.
Okay.
So you're sitting in a waiting room or, maybe a quiet classroom. The air is still, you're profoundly bored, and you casually glance up at the analog wall clock.
Oh, yeah, I know where this is going.
Right. You lock eyes with that thin red second hand, and you just wait for it to tick.
Yeah.
And you wait, and you wait. And that very first tick of the second hand, it just seems to hang in the air for an impossibly long time.
It really does.
It almost feels like you've caught the clock malfunctioning, or like the fabric of time itself is momentarily frozen in place right before it resumes its normal, steady, tick, tick, tick rhythm.
Yeah.
Exactly the feeling I'm talking about.
It's an incredibly distinct, almost eerie little pause in reality. You catch yourself thinking you actually just watched a battery die, but then the rhythm picks right back up. It's a universal experience, really.
Absolutely.
Something almost everyone has felt, but usually brushes off as just, I don't know, a weird lapse in concentration.
But the craziest part is that the clock is perfectly fine. Like the battery isn't dying and your concentration didn't lapse at all.
Nope.
So we are doing a deep dive today into a really fascinating piece of source material. It's called Chronostasis, the architecture of the stopped clock illusion. And our mission today is to figure out what's really happening here. The core premise is that this bizarre temporal pause is not a mechanical flaw in the clock. It's actually a remarkable, highly complex hack being performed by your own nervous system.
Yeah, it really is one of the most elegant biological cover-ups we know of. This illusion sits right at the intersection of information theory, neuroscience, and the math of data processing.
Which sounds super intense.
It does, but it's the perfect shortcut to understanding how our minds actively construct the reality we experience, every single second. We tend to think of human perception as a passive window to the world, but it is deeply, deeply active.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I'm just marveling at the idea that our own brains are secretly altering our perception of time, like right under our noses.
Yeah, it's wild.
But to understand why the brain has to distort time, the sources say we first have to look at the physical limitations of how our eyes gather data, right? We have to move from the illusion itself to the actual mechanical root cause.
Exactly. So when we think about looking around a room, we tend to imagine our vision functioning like a smooth, panning movie camera.
Right, just gliding seamlessly from one object to the next.
Yeah, but biologically, that is not at all what is happening. Our eyes do not pan smoothly. Instead, they make these extremely rapid, jerky, sudden jumps from point to point.
Just snapping around.
Right. And in neuroscience, these high-speed ballistic jumps are called saccades.
Saccades. And these jumps are happening incredibly fast, I'd imagine.
Unbelievably fast. I mean, they are among the fastest movements the human body can produce. When you shift your gaze from your computer monitor up to that clock on the wall, your eyes are whipping across your field of vision at blistering speeds.
Wow.
And this creates a massive biological problem, which is motion blur.
Oh, like when things get all smeared.
Exactly. If your visual cortex actually processed the light hitting your retinas during that high-speed eye movement, the resulting data would be a total disaster.
Which brings up a fantastic analogy from the text. It's like moving a smartphone camera way too fast while you're trying to record a video.
Yes.
You don't get a usable image. You just get this smeared, unreadable, chaotic mess of light and color dragged across the screen.
Exactly. And if we experienced that violent smear every single time we darted our eyes to a new target, well, the constant blurring would cause massive disorientation.
We'd be dizzy constantly.
Right. Your brain would be flooded with useless visual noise. We would be in a constant state of severe nausea, just completely unable to function. So to prevent this sensory overload, the brain employs a built-in firewall.
A firewall for the eyes.
Basically, yeah. It's a mechanism called saccadic suppression. Essentially, your brain literally severs the feed. It just shuts down visual processing during the jump.
That is so cryptic.
For the split second your eyes are in transit toward the clock, you are functionally blind.
Okay, wait. If we're constantly going functionally blind every time we shift our gaze, why doesn't my vision look like a flickering strobe light or a glitchy video right now?
That is the big question.
Like, I don't see sudden flashes of darkness or glitchy blackouts when I look around the room.
What's fascinating here is that your observation is the key to the whole illusion. You don't experience a strobe light effect because that glitchy, flickering darkness is exactly what the brain is working overtime to hide from you. The brain just totally refuses to let you see the blackout.
Because if I don't experience a black gap in my vision, My brain must be doing something, I don't know, mathematically extraordinary in the background to bridge that period of temporary blindness.
Exactly.
It's acting like a master video editor.
That's exactly how we need to think of it. We have to stop thinking of the brain as a simple camera. The conscious mind values continuity above almost everything else. It utterly refuses to show you a blank screen because a blank screen breaks your interaction with reality.
It needs a smooth narrative.
Yes, a smooth, uninterrupted narrative. So, when your eyes finally land on the target, so the clock on the wall and the muscles settle down enough to receive that first, clear, stable frame of data, the brain does something truly mind-blowing to cover up the blindness that just happened.
Which is,
It backdates the image.
like, retroactively.
Yes, it takes that very first static, clear image of the clock, and it retroactively copies and pastes it backward in time.
Oh.
It covers over the exact period when your eyes were moving and your vision was blocked by the firewall.
So it's literally pasting the destination image over the travel time.
And it does it so seamlessly that you don't even realize you are experiencing a manipulated memory.
That's incredible.
It creates a fascinating mathematical distortion in your perception of time. Because think about the duration of that first second you are perceiving on the clock face. The perceived duration ends up equaling the actual duration of the second on the clock, plus the duration of the eye movement that preceded it.
Oh, I see.
The brain stitched the travel time and the resting time together into one single elongated block of perception.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Thinking about the mechanics of this, it's exactly like a live TV broadcast on a tiny tape delay where the producer instantly replays a freeze frame to cover up a dropped signal.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
Imagine a producer sitting in a control room. The live satellite signal drops out for a fraction of a second while a camera physically swings around to face a new direction.
Right.
To cover up that dropped signal so the viewers at home don't see television static, the producer instantly grabs the first clear frame they get when the signal comes back online, and they replay it as a freeze frame to seamlessly cover the gap.
Exactly.
You, sitting on your couch, you don't see the static, you just see a momentarily paused image. And that perfectly explains why the clock seems to pause. Your brain just stretched the first frame backward to mask the gap in the feed.
Yeah, you are the viewer at home, entirely unaware that the producer in your skull just hit pause to cover up a transmission error. The clock itself didn't stop ticking. Your brain just fed your conscious awareness the exact same frame for longer than a second to keep the broadcast feeling smooth.
But knowing that our nervous system plays fast and loose with time just to cover up its own mechanical blind spots, I mean, that begs a huge evolutionary question.
It does.
Why would human biology rely on a system that literally hallucinates time? We're moving from the how to the why here.
Right, and it's crucial to understand that this temporal distortion is absolutely not a bug in human biology. It isn't a glitch or a flaw.
It's not a mistake.
No, not at all. According to the source material, it is a vital, highly sophisticated mathematical feature designed explicitly for our survival.
But how does hallucinating a paused clock help me survive?
Well, because the conscious mind functions fundamentally as a prediction engine. Our evolutionary ancestors had to navigate a highly dangerous environment full of fast-moving threats.
Right, predators, falling rocks, that sort of thing.
Exactly. To successfully predict where a physical threat is going to be in the next few seconds, the brain requires a seamless, real-time-like rendering of reality. By executing this retroactive time stretching, the visual cortex is successfully eliminating dangerous informational noise.
The blur.
Right. The motion blur from your eye movements is garbage data. It has zero predictive value. The brain removes the noise to keep its internal model of the world clean.
So what does this all mean? Because I get that having a stable, clean picture is mathematically nice. But if the brain is acting as a prediction engine specifically to avoid a moving threat, isn't backdating a static image technically feeding us outdated information when we need accuracy the most?
It does sound counterintuitive at first.
Right, like if a predator is lunging out of the brush at me and my brain hits pause on my video feed to cover up a blind spot, I'm reacting to a ghost. I'm reacting to where the predator was, not where it is.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to consider the alternative from a pure data processing standpoint. To calculate a trajectory, your visual cortex needs distinct, sharp anchor points.
Point A and point B.
Exactly. Blurry, motion-smeared streaks do not give you usable points. If your brain tried to process the smeared motion blur of a saccade while a threat was moving toward you, your spatial awareness would entirely collapse.
Oh, because everything is just a streak of color.
Right, you wouldn't know where the threat was, and worse, you wouldn't know where you were relative to the threat because you'd be incredibly dizzy.
So it's basically calculating that a fraction of a second of backdated static information is better than the alternative.
Having a continuous, stable perception of space is mathematically far safer and more useful for trajectory calculation than processing chaotic noise.
That makes a ton of sense.
The brain calculates that a slightly prolonged, stable image is a much better foundation for predicting the next movement than a smear of useless pixels. It prioritizes spatial stability over absolute chronological perfection. Clean, delayed frames allow the brain's math engine to extrapolate speed and direction accurately.
Yeah, it's intentionally choosing the data that is actually actionable. A freeze frame is actionable. A blur is just confusing.
Exactly.
It proves that accuracy in space matters more to our survival than accuracy in, like, milliseconds of time.
That's a great way to put it.
But if the nervous system uses this retroactive editing trick to stabilize our visual world, how far does this time censorship go? Does this apply to our other senses, or is this just an eyeball problem?
Well, the phenomenon of chronostasis proves that our perception of time is entirely subjective, and more importantly, it's modular.
Modular.
Yeah, the source details how this exact same time-stretching hack applies across other sensory domains. The brain can isolate and edit the timeline of one specific sense entirely independently of the others.
Wait, if my brain is doing this with my eyes, is it doing it with my ears too?
Yes.
What happens when I turn my head quickly to hear something?
The source highlights a perfect example of auditory chronostasis. They call it the telephone illusion. Think about what happens when you pick up a ringing phone.
Okay.
As you're moving the handset from the receiver up to your ear, your arm is moving, your head might be turning, and your spatial orientation to the sound source is rapidly changing.
Right, the sound is moving around my head.
Exactly. The acoustic landscape is shifting dramatically, but when you finally place the speaker against your ear, very often, that very first ring you hear sounds significantly longer than all the subsequent rings.
Oh, wow. It's the exact same sensation as the clock, just with sound.
Exactly. Your brain is filling the physical movement gap. Moving the phone through the air is the auditory equivalent of the visual saccade. It creates acoustic noise. The brain backdates the clear auditory input from when the phone finally rests against your ear to create a continuous soundscape. It masks the chaotic volume and frequency changes that occurred while the phone was moving through the air.
That is wild. And the text mentions this concept reaches into tactile sensations too. I understand eyes and ears, but how does touch factor into this? I mean, I don't look around the room with my hands.
Well, physical movement creates a similar data problem for touch. Imagine reaching out to grab a hot coffee mug. As your arm moves through the air, it's a complex motor command. Your skin receptors are firing off useless noise.
Like what?
Things like air currents, the rustle of your sleeve, the tension in your own muscles.
Oh, sure.
When your hand finally makes contact with the solid surface of the mug, the brain takes that sharp, clear, tactile signal and it backdates it. It suppresses the tactile noise during the movement phase and stretches the sensation of the contact backward, making the physical encounter feel incredibly immediate and stable.
That implies the brain is running these micro-edits constantly across all our physical senses just to keep us from feeling overwhelmed by our own bodily movements.
It really is.
And the source points out how this biological quirk is actually colliding with modern technology, especially when we start talking about virtual reality.
Oh, absolutely. Tactile and virtual chronostasis is becoming a massive hurdle in the VR gaming industry.
Really?
Yeah, when you're moving around in a virtual reality environment, developers often use mechanics where the player's camera rotates instantly. It's called a snap turn.
Right, because if you use smooth turning in VR without your physical body actually turning, the disconnect between your eyes and your inner ear can make you incredibly nauseous.
Precisely. So to save you from motion sickness, the game engine just bypasses the visual sweep entirely. It feeds your optic nerve a new image at a new angle instantly.
Okay, I'm following.
But when that camera snaps, the player's brain attempts to do what it has evolved to do over millions of years. It tries to reconstruct the missing visual frames to create a sense of continuity.
But there are no missing frames. The computer code just jumped from angle A to angle B in 1 millisecond.
Exactly. There was no muscular eye movement to trigger the temporal backdating, yet the brain is scrambling anyway. It tries to apply a biological time stretch to digital code that just doesn't require it.
Oh, man.
As a result, The brain's attempt to backdate and fill a gap that doesn't exist can cause players to feel like the game itself has briefly hitched or glitched or frozen, even when the software's frame rate is perfectly smooth and the hardware is functioning flawlessly.
Think about that. When gamers complain about a perfectly smooth VR game freezing, their hardware is fine. The computer is doing its job. Their own brain is essentially gaslighting them because it's trying to fill in frames that don't exist. The brain is hallucinating a performance drop.
This raises an important question, right? The game engine fed them an instant transition, and the brain basically said, no, transitions take time. Let me add a pause here so this makes sense.
That is hilarious.
Software developers and engineers are no longer just writing computer code. They are literally having to struggle against the biology of human perception. They have to design software that anticipates and compensates for the human brain's compulsive need to edit time.
The developer is trying to build a seamless digital world, but the player's brain is constantly trying to run its own biological post-production software over the top of it.
Yeah, and this brings us to the ultimate synthesis of what the source material reveals. Chronostasis isn't just a neat party trick with the wall clock. It is a profound realization that physical time and psychological time are two completely different dimensions.
Right.
Physical time is objective, measurable, and relentless. It ticks away at a constant rate. But psychological time, the time you and I actually feel and experience in our conscious minds, is highly malleable. We never, ever actually experience the universe in true, objective, real time.
Because there's always a delay. There is always processing time. The light has to hit the retina, the signal has to travel down the optic nerve, the visual cortex has to decode it, the brain has to check for errors, suppress the blurs, copy, paste, and backdate the clear frames.
Your daily life is essentially a highly edited, compressed, and post-processed version of reality. It is meticulously rendered by the master video editor inside your skull before it is ever presented to your conscious awareness.
The clock on the wall keeps ticking at exactly 1 second per second. The physical universe marches on regardless of what we are doing. But your brain, your internal editor, is the ultimate arbiter of how long that second actually lasts for you.
You're watching the broadcast of your own life on a slight delay, and the editor in the control room is just making sure the show runs smoothly without any static.
You know, the sources tell us that the brain backdates our vision and stretches sounds just to keep our perceptions smooth and comfortable. It hides the rapid eye movements. It hides the motion blur. But if our internal editor is constantly clipping out the noisy glitches to give us a seamless, comforting narrative of reality, well, it makes you wonder, what other gaps or blind spots in your daily experience is your brain quietly covering up right now without you ever noticing?